Welcome back to Sales Insights with Sarah. This is the podcast for sales professionals and business leaders looking to implement new strategies and drive sales growth in their organisations. I'm your host, Sarah Downs, and my guests and I will be sharing with you some of our own experiences in business and sales insights to help you gain focus and take action. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Sales Insights with Sarah podcast. So today I am delighted to have a very special guest with me. I would like you to all welcome Peter Hopwood. So Peter reached out to me about a month ago, I think now, to have a chat about the podcast, and we got on really well. We hit it off on a number of topics around sales and specifically video proficiency. So today we're going to have a chat about the art of video proficiency and tap into some of Peter's knowledge, experience and insight to help you all become and really show up as best you can when you're having to be on camera. So for those of you that don't know Peter, he is an international speaker himself and also a speaker coach for TEDx. I read on your profile that you have worked across 32 countries in 4 continents. So you're well traveled, and that you've also lived in 7 of those. And also that you often host and MC for live and virtual events. So thank you so much for joining me. And it would be great to start with telling everyone that's listening a little bit about you and I guess what took you into that speaking, training and coaching world.
Yeah, listen, first of all, thanks for setting this up, and I'm looking forward to having a great chat with you right now, delving into all things public speaking, not just on stage, but how to do it well through this little screen we're on right now on Zoom. So yeah, so I'm a public speaker coach. I help people to tell better stories, how to tell those stories with more impact on a stage, but again virtually as well, really showing up the best you can and really connecting with the people that are looking at you, listening to you, and hopefully trusting you as well. So that's really what I do. How did I get into it? It's a long story, but if we go back 25 years ago, I used to work for a holiday company, a holiday rep, and a lot of that, funnily enough, is actually presenting. It's presenting the resort, presenting the things people can do while they're on holiday and enjoy while they're there. And most of my job was actually presenting those ideas, presenting those the things they could do on holiday to about 150 people 3 or 4 times a week, the same presentation, a week in, week out. And through that presentation, through those presentations I did quite often, I found that small things I could do to change the way I present, the way I sound with my voice, with my body, how I'm feeling about certain things. All those things influence the way people look at you, perceive you, trust you, and whether they want to ultimately, in that context, ultimately want to buy from you. So it all started from there. I had a kind of talent for that, enjoyed it, and fast forward to today. Well, fast forward through the years, through those 25 years, a training company, communication skills company, focusing on pitching, focusing on helping people to stand on a stage and do the same thing. And that's exactly what I do today. So based in Croatia, work globally, helping people to show up well on stage, and over the last year or so, really focusing on how to do the same thing virtually.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that at the end, because that's what I was thinking. There must be a lot of movement right now from stage presence to, I guess, video proficiency, as we've said before. So I've attended a lot of virtual events this year. I think January to March, we got the physical ones in, and it just stopped. And what I've realized is there's some people that are great on stage, but not necessarily great behind screen. And then there's people that I have never seen on stage in the industries in which I work, and I turn up to events, they're the speaker and they blow me away, but they're doing it from behind screens. So do you believe that, being a speaker is one thing? Do you think that some people have, I guess, more strengths, capability, competency in different areas?
Well, very simply, the two areas you've just described are very different. Are very different, and they're for a different format, a different audience, and there are skills, certain skills in one, certain skills in the other. Many of them overlap, but there are very different things to do and to adapt. And for me personally, I had to adapt more to presenting, hosting events online rather than on a stage. So some of the differences. Let's go through some of the main differences. On a stage, people can see your movement, and often the movement is wider. You have control over the area you're in, and those wider movements look good on stage. They give you maybe more credibility, and they give the person looking at you or listening to you a sense of your confidence and your control about what you're sharing and the messages as well. We don't have that on this box. We don't have that on a Zoom call. We have less to see. So we can't see your body. We can't see much of your movement. All we have to go by really are a few things, a handful of things, a lot less than if it was in person. We only really have to go by what we see in terms of the face. And remember, it's a lot more intimate. It's a lot more intimate right now because you can see my face, you can see my expressions, you can see how I'm feeling. Even when I'm not talking, you can see how I'm showing up. So remember, showing up, speaking on a Zoom call isn't just about when you're speaking, but also when you're listening. People are looking at you, they're perceiving you as a professional, even when you're saying nothing at all. So as I say, it's a lot more intimate. Yeah. Also, we can't really see gestures. We can't see the wider gestures. When we see gestures, often it helps us to remember words, remember phrases, remember messages. And often when we use messages, we sound better as well. So we can't do as much as that as we can if it was live. We can still do it, and it's actually really important to somehow show those gestures if you can. So right now, I'm just going to look down at my camera, my image. There we are. So my hands are here. So things that I'm saying, you can still see my hands. You can still see when I'm my intonation on certain words, certain phrases, and I'm using my hands as illustrators to drive down that message as well. So your body, you still need to show body language while you're on Zoom. Again, another thing is your calmness. So calmness on a Zoom call really can help. So unlike on stage, unlike when you're face to face with somebody, your movement, all these signals from your movement are actually okay, right? But on a Zoom call, you really need to let people focus in on what you're saying, how you're saying it, and your voice, rather than the distraction of your movement. Right now, for example, those of you that are looking at this, I could be doing things with my body now, and I'm sitting back when I'm listening, or I might be like, when I'm talking about something, I might be doing like this, moving my shoulders a little bit. So all these things are sending messages to the person looking at me. So a quick tip would be to keep that as calm as you can, and use your gestures where you can, and look directly at the camera, right? Looking at the camera. So me looking at you right now, what does that do? That gives you a sense that I'm present, a sense that I'm focused on you, that I'm listening to you, that I'm interested in you. So as soon as I sort of look away, or I'm thinking about something else, or maybe actually I'm looking at something online while I'm listening to you, you can feel that, you can see that. All right. So if possible, try as much as you can to look at the camera. Now that's a really tough thing to do, because as humans, we want to see people's faces, even our own face. So my the image of me is actually just below the camera. So if I look at myself, again, I'm actually not looking directly at the lens, looking at you. I'm now looking at you down even lower. And so it kind of breaks this connection. So it's something you can train to do, something you can get used to if you keep doing it, but just keep remembering, try to keep looking at the lens, and that will give a sense that you're really focused on what's happening in that call.
Yeah, no, there's some great tips there. And I remember our last conversation speaking about assumptions. And if you are not self-aware of what you're doing, then you may not be aware of the assumptions some people may make. So an example of that was taking notes. So at the start of a call, we can say, do you mind if I take notes? So that when somebody's looking down, you're not assuming that they're, looking at their phone. But also that may have been said an hour ago. So something I often do, and I remember sharing this with you, is I talk with my hands a lot as well. And sometimes I try and tone it down, I must admit, on video, because I think some people can find it quite distracting. But when I show a pen in my hand, and I do that on purpose, so that when I do look down, it's more obvious what I'm doing. Now, that has to be quite, I have to do that on purpose, I have to do it with intention. Whereas if I was sitting in a meeting room with you right now, I wouldn't have to do that, because you're, like you say, you see everything, not just this little box of head and shoulders. So it's just making sure that, we're not looking distracted, that we're present. So we show up and we're present with that other person or those other people. But I think especially in this one-to-one scenario, people need to understand that they'll build trust with you if they think you're listening, being able to, paraphrase a little bit of repeat on what they've said. So it's not just that you're there looking at them, but you really are, listening. You're not having a
absolutely. I mean, I heard a great quote yesterday, actually, and essentially 80%, roughly 80% of C-suite executives admitted to finding it really difficult to build that trust that they would normally sense and feel if they were face to face. So meetings, chats, talking with other people within their industry, doing business online. Again, 80% said it's really tough to really tap into that trust they would get instinctively if they were meeting face to face offline. So this is really important, and being aware of how we show up, how we sound, what we say, what we look like, all these things help a lot. They help us, and they help the person looking at us as well. So if we can build on that, and again, it's not easy, it takes time, but one step at a time. I'm sure most people can actually build on their proficiency, build on the way they're engaging with people online.
Yeah, I quite often will, if I've recorded a meeting, sometimes I will go and watch that, but I'm really watching it to critique myself. If I was the person on the call with me, what would I feel? How would I feel? What would I think? What assumptions would I make? That's actually where I realized how much I use my hands and have toned it down. I actually will hold the table sometimes. It depends on, I guess, the tone of the call and who you're on. But part of me always thinks it's important to show more than just the face.
I mean, there are different ways of doing it, and not everybody is doing it in the same way. Some are doing it not so well, some are doing it okay, and some people are really being creative. So it's interesting the way we, in this box here, we could have a standard like I am now and you are, which is great. It fits the format, it fits the tone, we're both feeling comfortable. Some people, let's say, who are just used to maybe not wearing professional clothes, and they've got their favorite mug, which in some formats, in a certain environment, it works well. In other environments, that may not work as well, you know. So some people are expecting a little bit more professional, sharing a little, feeling a little bit more corporate perhaps, rather than casual. Again, what's behind us is really important as well, setting the scene. You've got a great background, it's simple, my focus is on you. It's almost like a plain background with 2 lines. I mean, for me that's fine, because my focus on all of this is you. There's nothing to distract me. I've got a few things behind me, but once you've seen them once, you're not really going to bother keep on looking at them. So always remember what's behind you, the lighting, how people see you, the angle of the camera. The angle of the camera, I think, is you know, in terms of logistics, these are very basic but simple things which give you credibility even before you've started. So if you've got a camera looking directly at you, so eye level, like it is with you, like it is with me now, this gives almost a sense that we're both on level ground. You know, I'm not higher than you, you're not higher than me, and also the opposite. So having that at eye level really helps. If you have it slightly lower, then there's a sense of looking at you know, into somebody's nostrils, which we see far too often, or even looking down. Again, the lighting, make sure you've got lighting in front of you. If you've got natural light, even better. If you haven't, try and get a spotlight, or I've got my spotlight right in front of me here. My ring light is actually on the other side in the other room, but this one seems to be working well. I've got kind of little light behind me there. So it test it all out. Try it, test it, and just create this simple atmosphere where people can focus on you.
Lighting's a really interesting one, especially if you're working across different time zones. You know, we do quite a bit in the US and Canada, so I'll quite often need to do late night or evening calls. Now, I'll always come into the office to do that because my lighting's so good in here. Whereas at home, I struggle to get, you know, just even with artificial lights, you know, ring lights, etc. It's just not the same. But also we're coming into winter now, so I'm noticing it when I'm on Zoom or Teams with people that are working from home, is that they have the same lighting in place as they had in July, but it's dark by 3 p.m. So, and they haven't adapted that to obviously fit with the season, the time of day. And it is quite difficult when you feel like you're speaking to someone that's in the dark, because you're not getting the same cues, you're not getting the same expression, and it's just distracting because you're sitting there, you know, having a conversation thinking, put the lights on, you know.
Absolutely.
So if that's constantly going on in your head, you're distracted, and therefore you're not really present with somebody. So it's really small things like that that make such a big difference. And you spoke about the camera angle. And you probably saw me smile because I had a call last week, a Zoom call with somebody, and their camera was looking at them like this, face on, but I was over here. So they were having a conversation with me. And I'm quite direct, I'll say it as it is. So I said to him, are we going to have a face-to-face today? And he said, what do you mean? And he hadn't even realized. But I don't know how he didn't realize, because you can always see yourself as well as the other, but it was on Teams, so you're much smaller on screen. But he hadn't noticed, and I was like, it'd be nice to see your face while I'm speaking to you.
Yeah, although you have a lovely ear hole, I'm sure your face would look a lot better.
nice sides of your, you know, your nose. But you know, it's just, if people aren't, I guess, being self-aware of how am I showing up? What do I look like? You know, how are people going to take me? Then that's the problem, because usually if you have a look at your own videos, you would quickly realize what you're doing wrong and fix it. But if you're not doing that, and something I wanted to touch on is we have speakers professional speakers are having to adapt right now and change their skill set to now present on screen. But you also have millions and millions of people that have never had to present or be on a stage before, having to now present every day on screen. And employers are giving them next to no support or guidance on how to do that. And it's affecting their businesses, and they're not realizing that that's actually one of the main reasons that they're not getting, they're not building the relationships, they're not getting the sales, they're struggling to maintain a team culture. And a lot of it comes down to video proficiency and how we show up every day. Now, if it was in the office and somebody wasn't showing up great, somebody would say something. But there just seems to be this different attitude when everyone's on screen. We won't tell them that their lighting is poor, or we're distracted by something, but we're just not going to say. So I think it's looking at ourselves, but then who else can we help by just telling them our own experiences of being on screen with them as well.
Absolutely. So like we've said already, there are so many small things you can do just to boost up, just to give yourself a few credible points before you even began to speak. Like we say, like the camera angle, the lighting, the tone as well, really important, the tone. So before you even begin, take a minute or so just to think to yourself, okay, what is this about? What's the purpose of why we're on here? What do we want to achieve? What do we want to walk away with? What's the perception I want people to have of me if I haven't met them before? So just ask yourself those questions, and that'll give you kind of almost a stronger purpose of why you're there. And again, another thing which is really important, which I see so often, I'm sure you do as well, and hear it in fact, is when we're online, again, our engagement level, our attention span offline is very short. You'd agree with that. Most people would agree with that. And it's getting shorter, as we all know. But online, on a screen, it's even shorter. So anything we look at on a screen, whether it's a TV, a laptop, a mobile, whatever it is, our attention spans are a lot shorter. So whatever we do on here, we have to make sure it's engaging. We have to make sure people are engaged and they want to listen to what you have to say, and we keep their attention. So one way of doing that is actually being as concise as you can. So instead of waffling on and saying things that aren't actually bringing any value, and just keep talking, and that can often happen. Now listen, if we were having a coffee, if me and you met over coffee and talked about the podcast and what we're going to do and what we're going to say, that would be fine. We would throw in things, and you would throw in things, and it would, the time would go by, but hopefully at the end of our coffee together, we'd have a plan, and we'd both walk away feeling happy, knowing what we're doing. Online, we can't really do that. We need to be very clear and concise about what we're sharing. So shorter sentences, a lot clearer, because people can't remember all this information. All right. So being concise is actually a really good tip to make sure that people are going to remember what you say, and naturally how you say it as well.
And there's the one-to-one situation like this, and then there's the one-to-many, where you could be attending a team meeting or an event where there's 30, 50, 100 people on screen. If you get the opportunity to speak, you're absolutely right. There's no small talk really. You just have to get to the point.
Absolutely.
And use storytelling as much as possible, again, to help people remember what you've said. And I've seen a lot of this happening at more networking style events that you get invited onto during a conference, where there's a lot of people on screen at once, and they have to go around and introduce themselves. Now, I think most people have got how quick you need to be, but there's always that one or two people that just keep talking and talking and talking. And on Zoom or other platforms, you see the participant number, And if you watch that participant number, it just drops, because people are like, I don't have time for this. I've given up. You just not their
Click, I'm out of here. Yeah.
And you see it all the time, and especially virtual events. Now, I ran a conference in March for just over 200 people. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some things happening on stage where I could feel the drop of engagement in the room. And a couple of people may stand up and walk out, toilet break or take a call, get a coffee. But you would never have a mass exodus like you do on Zoom or, a virtual style event. Can you imagine if you were standing on stage and 50% of the room just disappeared?
Yeah, I love that. I love your phrase. Mass exodus. Everybody just gets up and leaves. I mean, that's probably the most daunting thing anybody can, as a speaker, you can feel. But yeah, there are a handful of things. If you're somebody who leads an event or a call or a webinar, or you're leading the meeting online, there are a handful of simple things you can do, you can think about to already boost up that engagement and try to avoid a mass exodus if possible. So the first thing is, so when people join the webinar or the call, some naturally will join a couple of minutes before, some eager beavers will be there 5-10 minutes before. Some of us naturally will join 3 minutes after, even maybe 10 minutes after. So as people are joining, as they come in, ask them, how you doing? I'd love to know where you are right now. If you don't know them, is a nice one is to ask them, where are you right now? What's the weather like right now? How you doing? Or just ask them one simple question, like, tell me one thing that's made you smile today, whatever it is, and then pop it in the chat. So as people start to join, they can see people have actually shared their answer, are engaging. So when other people, it's that mass herd effect. When people see other people doing something, they're more likely to do it themselves. So that already starts engagement. And then you, as the person leading, you can ask, you can comment on what you see, and then get people to use that chat area is great. It's a great way to bring people in and a signal to everybody that they can engage. Because unlike a stage, or unlike a room where you're speaking to an audience, that audience can't really give back. All they can give back is maybe their body language, but that's pretty much it during the event. But something online, they can actually interact and share with you. Another great idea as well is, because it's physical, you can make it physical. You can actually make it more physical. For example, again, right now I'm at home. This is where I'm doing most of my work. You're right now in your office, perhaps?
In the boardroom, yeah.
Right, okay. But sometimes you're at home, but wherever you are, often there's books. There are books around. So one nice idea is to say, okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I want you to stand up and grab a great book on your bookshelf, or a book you think is, or the last book you've read, or a great business book you'd love to share. 30 seconds, go. Everybody gets up. They grab some of them bookshelves are just behind, because we see a lot of bookshelves already behind us. They grab a book and then they show it. They show it actually through the screen, and then people can see that. And then almost everybody is intrigued to know, what other book has somebody got, or maybe they've got the same book, or maybe they've got that same book on their bookshelf. And so we can see and feel how people are feeling about a certain book, but it gives us a little bit of insight into their personalities, into their character, and also part of their home life. It doesn't have to be a book. It could be, grab an object that means a lot to you today. 30 seconds, go, bang. And then they grab it and they come back and they show that. And then you've almost got stories you've got a few stories you can jump into, and people want to share. And again, it gives this kind of more personal, engaging flavor. And once they do that at the beginning, again, it's a signal to tell everybody throughout that session that it's okay and it's good to share, rather than just, let's say, me right now, or you just speaking to everybody, and not letting everybody engage, because that's really where people can easily just click a button, and the mass exodus begins.
Yeah, it was when you said following the herd, people will follow if one person starts. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, and that also includes leaving the room. So if they see, 10 people have just dropped off, it's okay, I can drop off, no one will notice. Whereas if you're in a physical event, you would be, if you were seen to keep leaving, you'd be seen as rude, so people would do that because they'd worry about what people think.
Yeah.
Where on virtual events, you can really do it in private. If you're going to get up and leave, or if you've got it running in the background, but you're not actually engaging, then nobody knows. But the best one I've seen to get engagement at the start was, I had an event with the joining instructions. They told us to set our virtual background where we live. So not necessarily the country, but more like the city or the town. And as soon as we came on, you had all of these, backdrops of cities, castles, coastlines, and some people had even put on, Hawaiian shirts and things like that. And straight away, it's just made everyone smile. And smiling is so powerful. And when people were joining, they were coming in, everyone's happy, this is great. And it kept people busy because they're looking around the pictures trying to guess, where's where.
Absolutely. And again, another very simple thing, as the person leading the call, as the person who's managing what's happening during that session, again, at the beginning, tell everybody, listen, I want to make this as engaging as possible. I'm here on the call with another 50 people from around the world. I'd love to know, where you are. Let's try and make this as engaging as we can. Use the chat, and let's share. So just the point of view of somebody listening to that, it gives the impression that I'm interested in you. It gives the impression that I want to listen to you. I don't want to just keep speaking to you. I want this to be interactive. And that's where, like, we fully agree, that's where, if we haven't got that engagement or interaction, there's a higher chance, it increases the chances that we're just going to leave, get up and leave, click that button and walk away. So yeah, from the beginning, get people to know, listen, this is it, this is going to be engaging. I want to know what's going on, and getting them to get up and grab something and show it on the screen really, really helps. Another idea, again, is instead of using PowerPoint, so we see PowerPoint, we see slides so often on our screens anyway, and to see that actually on a call is nothing new, right? Nothing new at all. So doing something a little bit different gets us to remember things. So anything new or novel, our brain tells us, hang on a minute, let's check this out. So instead of using a slideshow, instead of using a PowerPoint with certain images or words on there, why not just use, I haven't got any here right now, but you can use, Post-its. Write down a word or the question on the Post-it or on a piece of card, or even get those pieces of cards actually printed up, and then bang, hold it up to the screen, hold it up to the camera for a few seconds. They remember that, and that people will remember that more than, let's say, a PowerPoint image that they see on a screen day in, day out. So the idea is really looking for ways where you can do things differently, using the space you're in to your advantage, and let people have a look a little bit about into your environment, into where you are. There's nothing wrong in moving the screen slightly and letting people see other parts of your office, or maybe let's have a tour. Let's all go on a tour of each other's offices. 60 seconds. So simple things you can do to really make people feel like they're interacting, and it's not just looking at a screen and being a passive observer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spoken a lot about, I guess, events. Most of the conversation we've had so far is more webinars, people when there's multiple people and you're showing up really as the speaker or the presenter or the host. Now, what would be great is to translate some of your experience and insight into what are sales, business development people missing out on just doing a one-to-one. You're the salesperson, you have a prospect in front of you. How you show up is just as important. Now, the reason I'm asking this is part of my day job, I assess a lot of commercial teams, and video proficiency is actually a competency that we assess on as part of the overall effectiveness and improvement analysis. And I have been astounded that even 9 months into lockdown, how low those scores still are. And the score is really built up on is how do we know how to be video proficient and how much of it are we doing? And they're still crazy low, like below 20% for most people out of 100%. So are you able to translate, I guess, some of the things you've already taught us into that more one-to-one meeting environment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's very simple in terms of, a handful of things, again, to remember, things that, sales professionals are doing anyway when they're in the real world, and bringing that to this screen. So again, for example, before going into a meeting, again, knowing what the purpose is, knowing what the tone you want to achieve is. Again, that body language, we can see each other when we're face to face. We can feel each other. We can see how someone's breathing. We can hear the tone of their voice. We can hear if an objection is coming. We can feel all those things offline. So the idea is really to be aware of those. The same thing when you're on a Zoom call or on a one-to-one call virtually. So again, like we've already said, looking at the camera, giving your attention, feeling present, your voice. So people can see offline the body and how it moves, and all those non-verbal cues are a lot easier naturally offline. Online, we don't have so many. So our voice, so how we say things, the intonation of our voice, how we're projecting our voice, this really does matter even more in a one-to-one setting online. So ideas with the voice are simply be more aware of how you sound, a lot more concise with what you're saying. Intonation, the intonation of how you're sharing your messages, the way you say things, make sure that comes across. We almost have to somehow almost exaggerate that level when we're online. And if we can do that while we're online, then it really does help.
And how important do you think it is to, I would call it mirroring? So if you're, I guess, normally quite a bouncy, energetic character, and you, I guess, come into the room, show up with somebody that is much less and has much less energy, how important do you think it is if you're the salesperson to mirror that?
Okay, so it's exactly the same as if you were doing a one-to-one. You would walk into the room and you would feel what that other person, what their tone is. You wouldn't just jump in and be, show all that energy without really feeling what the other person's tone is. That emotional temperature in that room, again, you really have to feel that. So just by, again, starting off by smiling, looking, focused, feeling present, really listening and taking in those cues. A lot of it is actually listening and really trying to pick up those signals through the other person's voice, how they're feeling. Again, at the beginning, make it really clear why you're both there, why you're both there on the call, and what you want to achieve, and really focus on that aim. And then through that, again, you can really feel how the other person is reacting. So yeah, on a Zoom call, on something virtually one-to-one, you really have to try to learn how to pick up those cues more subtly than if you were face to face.
Absolutely. But I do believe that we can get more of them doing this than just on a telephone call. And there's still a lot of salespeople that I'm coming across that are trying to avoid Zoom calls and Teams calls like the plague because they're not confident. They don't feel comfortable. So they would prefer to jump on a phone call and they're not performing. They're not getting that what they should or could in their manager's eyes what they should, but they're not getting out of that what they could. And what I'm often saying to them is that you can pick up on a lot more having the face-to-face if you do it well, and being concise, asking really great questions early, not necessarily answering the question, but their response to the question, but asking questions keeps people engaged because they kind of think, well, where is she going with this? I want the answer to that question. Is she going to give me? That really helps. And in sales, to do sales well, we need to ask a lot of questions. So that should come quite natural. But what about all the people that are not confident to get on camera? What could they be doing? I don't really believe it's a practice makes perfect, personally. I know a lot of people do. I think practice helps. But I also think getting some guidance and mentoring, coaching, like in anything, helps even more. And if you want your team or you want to perform at something quickly, then you don't have time to put in all the practice either.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Exactly. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice plus awareness, plus guidance, plus help can actually boost you a lot, boost you forward a lot quicker than if you weren't doing that. So yeah, it's the more you do it, the more experience you'll get, but you really do need to be really fully aware of how people are doing it right, and they can really help you quickly to move forward. Yeah.
And is there any resources that you would recommend people looking at, whether that be YouTube videos, websites, it doesn't really matter, that you would recommend people going to if confidence is the issue?
Listen, I mean, I think in terms of the confidence, I think it's more about the practical things you can do. And when you do those things, you take that action, that makes you feel more confident. So the more things you do well online on your calls, the more confident you'll feel, and then that will show and that will grow, right? So online on YouTube, there are a great set of different videos, and a lot of people are doing lots of videos all about virtual engagement. So all you have to do is type in virtual engagement, Zoom, let's say, those 3 words, and there are a lot of companies and a lot of people sharing lots of small, great nuggets of information, of things you can do and think about while you're on a call. And then again, once you start doing those things, very quickly your confidence will start to grow. It won't grow unless you do those things. So yeah, you can find a whole bunch of ideas that will really make you feel like, actually, this is almost like a project. I can do these things. I can get better. I don't have to do all of them all at once. One step at a time, small things, And when you do them, you'll see actually how you can actually grow quicker, and the engagement rises as well.
Absolutely. I had one lady back, must have been about May time, so quite early into lockdown, that was terrified. She said every time she went to come on a Zoom call, she just froze. A bit like I am like that with stages. I'm not a fan of going on stage. I do it now because I have to, and I've become more confident. But I used to be like that. And she just freezes, and then she'll lie that the camera's not working, for example. So what she did, and this wasn't advice, she just took her some of her own advice on this occasion, is that every time she had a phone call, like a meeting on a phone call, she sat herself up, she got dressed, she had her lighting well, she did it on her headphones so that she could move, and she set up the camera on her screen so no one else could see her, but she could see her. And for a few weeks, every call she did, she performed as if she was on a Zoom call. The person on the other side of the phone had no idea. And that helped her build her confidence to one day, turn the camera on, because she had been doing it in private, really, without anyone knowing, and had become very self-aware, and had learned a lot about herself and what she liked, what she didn't like, and realized that it wasn't as bad as she thought. And I thought that was a great story, because I hadn't heard of anyone doing that before, and I don't think I would have thought to do that. It's not quite the same thing, is it? And I think that, there's what I would say to everyone listening is check out some of Peter's, own social media channels as well, because through doing some of the research for the podcast, I came across quite a few tips and hints and good bits of content in there as well. So where's the best places for people to follow you, Peter?
Really simply, jump on to LinkedIn, can link up with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, just say that you've listened to this podcast, or you're in contact with Sarah, just so I know how you've linked up with me. Link up with me, and then you never know when we might actually need each other's help. Also my website, that's under construction right now, so LinkedIn, I suppose, is the best place for you. Everything's on there. You can check me out, see what I've done, what I'm doing at the moment, and again, if you think we can collaborate, let's send out a message and let's chat. Perfect.
Thank you so much for joining me, Peter, and I really enjoyed your conversation, just as much as the first one that we had, which unfortunately wasn't recorded. But I think we've covered most of it in the episode.
Lovely chatting with you, and it's really good to talk about something that you like doing, to talk about something that you love. So thanks for inviting me, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Insights with Sarah podcast. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, so that you are notified of every new episode. If you could take a few minutes to leave a review, it would be greatly appreciated. See you next time.